To make a cake topper look quite 3D can be a little bit tricky, and in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I do it in Design Space, to the tricks that I use to get this kind of effect, as well as the materials. My name is Kelly, and let's get clacking. Now, some of the materials that I like to use are a little bit thicker, like the Cricut craft board. This kind of craft board is quite a lot thicker than your normal cardstock, and because of that it provides a lot of sturdiness to the actual cake topper, but any kind of higher GSM cardstock will work perfectly. Then of course the colors and things like that you decide to use for this cake topper are completely up to you. I'm going to be going with more of a green theme, as this cake topper I actually made a few weeks ago for my 10,000 subscribers celebration, so yay 10,000, thank you so much for subscribing. And I used more of a green kind of and a Monstera kind of theme for this one, and because of that I used some normal scrapbooking paper that works really well with the color theme. So don't be afraid to change things up and use multiple different colors, multiple different types of cardstock, patterned cardstock, plain cardstock, metallic paper, those kinds of things, because having all of those different elements can really bring your cake topper together. Now, I wouldn't necessarily go with completely different colors and completely different things. Try and keep to a theme when it comes to choosing the things that you're going to be making out of your cake topper, as of course you really want everything to mash well together. The other thing that I like to use is craft foam. Now, you can use just plain colored craft foam. This is just normal foam, but this one is actually glitter. Instead of having glitter paper, you can have glitter craft foam as well. And that's great to kill two birds with one stone, and it's relatively cheap. You also need a few different types of glues, and if you don't have craft foam, then you'll need foam tape. Now, the craft foam itself is going to help us give the dimension on the cake topper, but if you don't have craft foam in the matching colors or in complementary colors, then foam tape will work not as well, but you'll get the same effect. So let's hop on to Cricut Design Space and start designing our cake topper. So with our paper in mind, we're going to start designing in Cricut Design Space. I'm going to open the text function and type in what I want to say on this cake topper. So for me, this is going to be a celebratory 10,000 subscribers. As at the time of filming this video, I am almost there. I should hit it within the next couple of days. So chances are I'm already there when you see this video, but let's celebrate it anyway. So I'm going to type in 10 and then a K, a capital K, because I want it to stand out as well. And then the first thing I do is to select the font, and I kind of build out one element and everything else around that one particular thing. So I'm going to check out the fonts that I want. Because it's going to be quite a busy cake topper, I don't want to have a very thin font. So I want to choose a font that is a little bit thicker, that it'll stand out against something else. And I'm going to my bookmarked fonts, as these are typically the ones that I choose anyway, and I'm going to choose one of those. I think I'm going to go with this font, and I'm going to decrease the space between the letters just to bring them a little bit closer together. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an offset of this so that it stands out quite a bit. So I'm going to just use the offset in the top of the screen, and I probably won't change it too much. I'm just going to decrease it a little bit, but still keeping it in the positive just to add an additional dimension to this part of the card. And I'm going to click apply. Now, I will be changing the colors as I go along, so I think I might grab a white piece of cardstock and make the 10 in white and have the background of the 10K in black, just so that it stands out quite a bit. Because I want this to be the focal point of the cake topper, I want to make sure that it's not going to get lost in the other elements that we're going to be adding. Next, I actually want to add a banner to the bottom. Not anything too crazy, so I'm going to add in a banner on the images, and I'm just going to type in banner and see what comes up. I really like the look of this one. There are some elements that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a banner that already has 2 layers, which I can filter out, but I like doing things the hard way apparently. So I'm going to add that to the canvas, and we'll play around with it a little bit. So what I do here is I ungroup the layers so that I can move them around and play around with them. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to contour out the large part of the banner so that we have kind of two separate layers. Now I'm going to change the colors, so this part is going to be the darker part of the banner and this one is going to be the lighter part. So I'm going to change it to a light green, and then this one I'm going to change to a darker green. So when you have the one banner on top of the other, you can kind of see the almost 3D-ish effect that I'm going for. But I do want to use the contour feature again to remove out small little parts of the banner, like these little sections here and over there. So the contour feature I'm just going to open again, and now I'm going to manually click on the little parts that I want to remove. So you can use this feature to really manipulate your designs and remove any parts that you don't want to have. And you can see how it kind of now looks a little bit more like the banner has a shadow to it, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to move that down to the bottom. I'm going to group it again, and I'm going to send it to the back so that it is behind the 10K. So we can kind of start seeing now what the banner is actually going to look like. And I can start adding in some other parts. I want to have a circle at the back, so I'm going to the shapes section and I'm going to add in a plain circle. I'm going to make it quite a bit bigger just so that it fits around that section. And then I'm going to add in a square so that I can slice out the bottom part because I don't want that bottom part sticking out there. So I'm going to unlock the proportions so that I can make the square into a rectangle, make it a little bit wider. And I'm just going to click on the little square at the bottom, drag it out, hover it over the circle, maybe a little bit higher up. I'm going to press Shift on my keyboard and click the circle so that I have both the circle and the rectangle selected. And I'm going to click Slice. So essentially what this has done is it's just removed the bottom part of the circle. So now we have something that fits at the back there, but it doesn't come out the bottom, which is what I want. So I want to send that to the back, and you can see how it plays around nicely with that banner. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, but we can delete these elements because we don't need them anymore. And I do want to cut this one out of my nice scrapbooking paper so that it has a nice pattern behind it. So just to see what the design is going to look like, I'm going to change it to a print then cut so that I can add a pattern. But I'm going to change back to a basic cut when we actually cut the design because we don't need to print then cut this part. So just to get an idea of what the cake topper is going to look like while I'm kind of designing it, I'm going to change it to a print then cut. So under the operations, I'm going to change it to print then cut. And then the color, you will see the print type is now available, and you can change the color to a pattern. And I'm going to select a pattern that's kind of similar to what I have, but not really, just so that I can get a little bit more of an idea of what it's going to look like. And then on that circle, I'm going to add an offset. We're going to use the offset quite a bit in this tutorial, and I'm going to click Apply. When I'm making these kinds of cake toppers, I like to have a contrast between light and dark, which you can see from the layers that we already have. We've got white on black, light green on dark green, so something that complements but is still contrasted to the original color, which is why I also tried to go for a light green and a dark green glitter foam, just because they kind of contrast each other. So this one I'm going to change to a dark green, but I don't want to make it the same dark green as the banner, as we'll probably use a different color. So I'm going to make it a slightly different green. And this one is not really accurate as the paper we have is a little bit lighter, so it should look fine. Now I do feel that the 10K is lost a little bit on this cake topper so far. So I'm going to select both of these layers. I'm going to right click and group them so that I can work with them together. And then I'm going to hover over the little square on any one of the corners and drag it out to make it a little bit bigger. And of course you can add lots of different elements to your cake topper if you wanted to. You can follow exactly these same steps and add in a monstera leaf or add in some other fun things. But I'm happy with the cake topper just how it looks like that, because it will look quite fun and 3D once we're done. And how I'm going to achieve that is by duplicating pretty much most of these layers and cutting them with craft foam. You can also use foam tape if you want to, but we have a Cricut machine, we can just cut craft foam. So in order to make our lives easier, work smart, not hard, by cutting most of these elements in craft foam, you can actually make it look really nice in 3D. So I'm going to change this layer back to basic cut, just so that we can cut it properly. Now, before we start duplicating things, I want to make sure that the sizing is correct. So I'm going to select the cake topper and I'm going to bring it out just to make it this kind of size that I want. I think that size is pretty much okay. And now I'm going to start duplicating some things. So I'm going to duplicate the 10K, as I want that to be cut out of craft foam as well as the banner and also the gray layer. Well, the one that's going to be cut out of our fun scrapbooking paper. I also need to change this back layer to basic cut, because when you do an offset on print and cut, it makes it a print and cut offset. So I need to change that. Now, everything that I need to cut out of craft foam, I'm going to make one color, and everything that I'm going to cut out of some of the other substrates, I'm going to make it a different color, because when we're cutting on the matte section, it goes according to color and material type. We can't have the two 10Ks on the same color, because the one will be cut using craft board settings and the other one will be cut using craft foam settings, which are two very different materials and require two different pressures. So the craft foam pieces, let's just take both of these. Let's make the craft foam color purple. So all of these are going to be cut out of craft foam and they're all going to be this purple color. And now we can go to the Make It panel. Now, of course, we have lots of mats to cut. If you find that you're cutting more than one thing out of the same type of material, let's say you have a pink foil board and a green foil board and you're cutting them both, you can move those to the same mat and cut them at once. So you don't have to keep switching mats all the time. For the craft foam mats, because we're cutting it out of the same material, I'm just going to move these elements to different corners of the mat so that I can cut down a piece of craft foam to that size that I'm going to cut, and then I'll be able to stick it on the mat and cut it in one go without having to change it all the time. So I'm going to hold down Shift and use the arrow to rotate the design and bring that one down to the bottom. And I'm going to do the same on the 8th mat. I'm just going to bring the one down to the bottom so we have the dark craft foam at the top and the lighter craft foam at the bottom. I'm also going to move this object to the lighter green mat so that I can save one mat. I can just put a piece of the dark cardboard at the top and a piece of the lighter cardboard at the bottom. So mat 1 on my side will be craft board. Mat 2 will be scrapbooking paper. Mat 3 I now no longer need, which is awesome. Mat 4 is going to be corrugated cardboard. Mat 5 will be foil board. Mat 6 I also now don't need, and mat 7 and 8 will both be craft foam. We go back to selecting mat number 1 and we click continue. We connect to our machine and then we select our material, load everything onto our mats. I'm going to be using multiple mats. The machine is going to cut mat 1. While it's cutting mat 1, I'm going to be loading mat 2. Once it's finished cutting mat 1, I'm going to pop in mat 2 and unload mat 1 and load mat 3. So it makes things go a little bit faster when you have more than one mat to cut on these kinds of projects. So I really like using more than one mat for this exact reason. It's going to take me a lot quicker to cycle through my mats and finish my project. So now that everything's pretty much almost cut, I may or may not have left a deep cut blade that I actually borrowed from somebody for this project in the car, and my husband is currently out at the moment, so I'm going to show you what to do if you have craft foam and you don't have a deep cut blade. So you just kind of cut it with your normal premium blade and then you just tear it. Now it's not as nice because the edges aren't clean, but a boer maak 'n plan, so which, for those of you not in South Africa, means a farmer makes a plan, which doesn't really directly translate as nicely, but yeah, you know what I mean. There we go. So now all our bits are cut out and we can actually start assembling them into the relevant places. And now we simply glue everything together that's in its separate parts, and then we can start stacking it all. You can go a few different ways. You can use kind of glue dots. These, it says it's an invisible mount, but it's essentially just a double-sided adhesive block, or you can go with a glue. I like to use Dual Bond as it is a very strong glue. For those of you in the US, you can use pretty much any craft glue. It won't matter too terribly much, but the stronger the better, as always. And I'm sorry for those of you that are screaming at me for putting glue over the glitter, but I didn't have a color that quite matched, and I don't really like that color along with the green, so sorry. Now all of our parts are glued to their foam, so now we've got nice dimension on each one of the pieces. And again, I didn't have any white foam, so I just added blue. Improvise. And we're going to glue all of these together again, like that. And you can slowly see the dimension coming through on this project. Even though the edges look a little bit rough, your project will look better if you don't adopt this method. Learn from my mistakes, or my misfortunes. What I always do when I'm gluing a smaller piece to a bigger piece is I put the glue on the smaller piece and then attach it to the bigger piece, because very often my eyes aren't good with figuring out what goes where, so I prefer to use this method. If you're finding this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up so that it can spread to more people that might find this content useful. Thank you to everybody that has subscribed, and if you want more Cricut content, make sure to subscribe below. The next step is something that I find very useful. I got these acrylic cake topper stickers, which is just essentially Perspex that's been cut in the shape of a sucker stick, but it's nice because it's see-through and it's sturdy. So I got these from Customizable, and for those of you looking for a link, I will leave an affiliate link down in the description. For those of you not in South Africa, I'm not entirely sure where you would get these. I will look for them on Amazon, and if I find something on Amazon, I will leave it down in the description as well. But you get them like this. All you need to do is to tear off the layers, because there's a protective layer on either side of the sucker stick, and it's nice and friction heavy. So once you pull off the protective sheeting or protective plastic, you can chuck it away. And depending on the weight of your cake topper, I would suggest sticking it somewhere in the back while your glue is still wet. You should be able to pull that apart and then just easily stick it in, and then your cake topper will stand just like that. You may need two, depending on the size of your cake topper. Now, if you're wanting to make some party packets, check out this video, as it'll take you step by step through the entire process. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. And remember, be kind to someone today. See you soon.